Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
So this isn't like recent news in the last week. This is like 2 weeks old now.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it on the phone. Mitchell Miller is a hockey player for the University of North Dakota. He was from Ohio, and he had been drafted by the NHL's Arizona Coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 weeks ago or so, he had his draft rights renounced by the Coyotes.
Oh.
And then, like, the next day, he was removed from the University of North Dakota hockey team.
Oh!
Both of these moves were due to intense scrutiny for drafting him or having him play for the school because of his history of racial insensitivity and bullying of a mentally disabled kid in school.
You dick!
The kid had fetal alcohol syndrome.
Okay.
And I think it helps to define what kind of disability he had.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean...
Because this is somebody with a cognitive disability. You know, you're not running around in the gym during PE and taunting the kid in the wheelchair, asking him if he wants to challenge you to a foot race.
Can you climb that rope faster than me?
Yeah. So they would constantly call this kid the N-word and make him call himself the N-word. And they'd fuck with him all the time. They'd, you know, give him Charlie horses and shit like that and just taunt him. And there was an incident where Mitch and another kid, they took a push pop into the bathroom, a sucker, you know, those push pops in a lipstick tube,
Yeah.
rubbed it on a urinal, and then gave it to the kid without telling him. Then they denied it. Then they admitted to it because, you know, they had him on camera heading down a hallway towards the only thing down there was a bathroom. But this kid that they did this to, he had to go through all kinds of fucking tests for hepatitis and shit. I mean, it was an ordeal.
Yeah.
So punishing them beyond school suspension obviously was very well warranted when it went to juvenile court. But this kid's fucking dad, apparently when he was called by whatever law enforcement agency that was investigating the incident at the school, his dad said about the victim, well, he's no angel either. So clearly this is a learned behavior at home. So really, what chance did he have to be a better person if the example set for him was an old man that was a fucking racist or just an idiot? So basically, all the bullying that Mitch Miller did of this kid, Isaiah, he was eventually charged with a number of things and sent to juvenile court and given community service, but never actually apologized to the kid he bullied. And that's what pissed the most people off when they heard about this. So the main thing here, the Coyotes had initially planned on sticking with him, arguing they were in a good position to help, quote, guide him to become a leader in preventing racism and bullying in the future. That position turned out to be disastrous from a PR standpoint and brought instant criticism. So the move to dump him, effectively pulling an about face, it was all about damage control.
Yeah, at that point.
I think the easiest thing to say here is they never should have fucking drafted him. Because the information about his past was available to them prior to doing so. And every team in the league apparently knew of the incidents, and several of them reportedly had removed him from their draft boards entirely, citing concerns about personal character. Because, you know, if you're going to draft somebody to a pro team, it's what they do at the NFL draft combine. They do these stupid interviews to fuck with these guys, just to see how you react to the pressure, and they really dig into your moral fiber, because you're representing the franchise. It's a brand. It's not just a sports team.
Yeah, I can get on that. Yeah.
Like with Ray Rice from the Baltimore Ravens knocking out his fucking fiance in that elevator years ago, and then obviously they stood to lose a great deal of sponsorship dollars and fan support if they didn't do something, and then ultimately he got suspended. But that's a whole other can of worms because they didn't treat it seriously enough. Additionally, with Arizona and all NHL teams knowing about his behavior, North Dakota had to have known about his past because they took him on and gave him a scholarship to play for their hockey program. All of this shit had to be there. So it's like a bad look on the university, too. You've got a pro level and a college level team that both of these programs decided, yeah, he's a piece of shit, but hockey, yay. Because he's so good, they're just going to overlook it and try to put a spin on it. One other thing I want to note is that he had also been involved with the Team USA under-18 hockey program in a smaller capacity, but what you're talking about going pro, he was a 4th-round draft pick. So, a lot of guys got drafted ahead of him. And the team, it was their first pick in this draft because they had been fined their 1st and 2nd round picks, I believe, due to other general manager and franchise chicanery in terms of contracts and all. I think it was like scouting tampering. I don't recall all of it, but the franchise in Arizona has been just a dumpster fire for years.
Sketchy.
Yes. So I'm just going to read a blurb from a story on SportsIllustrated.com. In announcing that Miller would no longer be part of the UND hockey program, University President Andrew Armacost said, quote, "We expect our students to live by our values in the classroom, in the community, and when representing the university on the field of play." End quote. The writer of this article puts, fine, but if that's the case, why offer him a spot on the team in the first place? Nothing's changed with this situation from the time that he committed to UND, and now with the exception of the fact that the story made its way into the public domain and became a national headline. Miller committed to UND more than 2 years ago when he was playing midget hockey. So it's not as though the university didn't have time to find out whether he represented its values ahead of time. And for both UND and the Arizona Coyotes to bring Miller into their organization, knowing his past, without a clear plan to address it, is reprehensible. And to throw Miller out like last week's garbage when his past became public is even worse. I agree with that, because it just looks like you're caving to public pressure to save face.
Okay, all right.
I get what Arizona was saying, like, we're going to take him. We realize that he's damaged goods, and he probably doesn't deserve this, but we're going to try to mold him. And that's really what you would do with somebody who has questions of moral fiber.
So would you say that you're fine with his life, more or less? I mean, that's a fine line there, because who knows if he would have been any good with the scholarship and everything. Are you fine with his life more or less being destroyed because of those incidents back when he was, what was it, middle school?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because that's the whole crux of the episode, is that I do believe he got what he deserved, but, and it's a big but, and I'll get into that here. Anyways, so I had read a blurb about him when the story first came out a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
Scant on details. And like every fucking story from major outlets, reported it the same way, but didn't necessarily get into the great details of the bullying. So I just fired off a tweet saying how it was going to draw out the holier-than-thou glasshouse cancel culture types. Because that's what any story like this tends to do. People are like, oh my God, how could you? Right? That tweet drew immediate criticism, believe it or not, because people thought I was sympathizing with him. I was not. I just thought the usual course of people who hear about that wrongdoing and act like they're perfect angels, oh my God, how could you? And that's what makes me the most sick when this shit comes out, is everybody acts like I would never. You've done shit similar to some extent.
Done shit, yeah. I can't say I picked on a kid with fetal alcohol syndrome, but I did pick on the weird kids sometimes.
That's the difference between growing up in the 80s and the 90s and growing up today.
Yes, very much.
Because I'm not saying it was more accepted, but it was made to be less of a life-altering thing you have to worry about decades down the line.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look also, too, with all the media nowadays, the Facebook and Twitter and all that, like, the information gets out there so freaking fast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even something as mundane and small as that, which, as horrible as it is, it's really a small, mundane thing in the grand scheme of things. That would never have been heard of anywhere back then, except for, like, a really small circle of people.
It would have been hockey fans.
Hockey fans in the town, maybe.
And where he grew up in Ohio. So, people were saying things like, so you're glorifying the behavior, and that I was being unsympathetic to his victim. Not my intention, but I rolled with it, because I counter with the fact that He was 14 when he got in trouble for it. So he was younger than that when he did all this shit. And although he was old enough to know better, as someone put it, that doesn't mean that he possessed the moral strength to be better.
Yep. No, that's something that I've been trying to teach my kids is be the bigger person. Like when one of the kids starts annoying the other one and the one decides to pound on that one.
Yeah.
It's like, be the bigger person, don't do it. But I know at that age it's really hard to do it, which is why some of the shit that I did, I could have been the better person, but I was 13.
Well, and everybody's judging him by an adult moral compass or an adult ego or level of emotional maturity. So this is what you're dealing with. It's not just a regular kid in school that was teasing a black kid and calling him the N-word and then mocking his disabilities or taking advantage of him because of his disabilities. What you've got is a jock, and those types are protected, and yet all their other jock boys with the peer pressure, all it takes is one fucking alpha male dipshit, and the rest of them just go crazy for what he's doing. Think about it. Think about the jock types that were on the varsity franchise when you were in high school. They stuck together, right?
Yeah.
It was a very good old boys type, we just hang with
They
each
stood up
other.
for each other. I can't say if the faculty at my school let them get away with stuff. I mean, shit.
I don't think you have to really twist your imagination too hard to picture some coach who's got some blue chip sports prospect, and if the kid acts up, they try to sweep it under the rug. Like, oh, it just bothers me.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It could have happened at our school.
No, I'm saying for anybody.
Anywhere, yeah.
No matter where you went to school, there was somebody that played some sport that was some hot shit fucking athlete, and he did something stupid, and he did not receive as bad of a punishment as he should have, or as anybody else would have if they were not a jock. So anyways, he was a kid when that happened, Mitch Miller, and he's still a kid now at almost 19. And there's a major difference between high school bullying and adult world harassment. You're weighing it on the same scale, and you cannot do that. Just like when people go, I can't believe so-and-so said this 15 years ago. Well, that was 15 years ago, and the social climate has changed drastically from what is acceptable to some people. And now you're acting like they said it fucking yesterday, and that's not the case.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up. He was, again, 14. Has he been doing it since? Has he ever been caught doing anything like that since?
They said that he would still rollerblade by the victim's house like he was taunting him. And while the other kid involved in this incident or series of incidents, the other bully, he offered up a written apology letter to the kid, the victim, but Mitchell Miller never did. And that's really what rubbed people the wrong way.
Well, and I can see that. I mean, if one, and then he continues to rollerblade by the house, it's just a case where he's just an asshole.
Yeah, pretty much. And you don't have a lot of sympathy for those people.
Not really. I mean, when you first started telling me this, I was like, okay, maybe it's a bit unfair, but the more I'm learning about it and have the opportunity to process it, yeah, this guy's an asshole.
Okay, so one of the people that tweeted back at me was this black chick who accused me of, quote, giving a pass to one of my own, and that if he was black, I'd be saying he got what he deserved. And that pissed me off. Because I am...
Drawing it along racial lines?
Yeah, I instantly called her out for bullshit race baiting and that assuming I have an allegiance to my own skin color. I don't. I said to her, how do you know that I'm taking this stance of an alternative punishment than canceling him? What if it's because I'm a guy? What if it's because I was a jock? What if it's because I'm a hockey enthusiast? Don't just assume it's color. That's disgustingly presumptuous of you.
That would, in my opinion, that would make her a racist because the first thing she thought of was somebody's skin color.
Yes. So I brought to her attention the fact that I had a disabled sibling myself, and although I had been teased about her, I'm not looking to turn back the clock 30 years to have those people punished for what they did when they were dumb kids. Because who they are today is not who they were 3 decades ago. So what fucking sense does that make? Mm-hmm. This one's a lot more fresh. It's only a 4-year difference between when he got in trouble in juvie and when he got drafted. But I then also mentioned to her the principle of how an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Like, oh, he abused this kid, so we're going to take everything from him. What does that solve?
For a young, dumb mistake, yeah.
And more snark in return. So I threw it in her face that her Twitter page listed the phrase God 100 Yet she apparently doesn't see the need to forgive people's trespasses by turning the other cheek. Because
I love hypocrisy. I mean, it annoys the shit out of me, but it's so easy to be a hypocrite.
yeah, and winning an argument sometimes involves throwing somebody's hypocrisy in their face, and it's kind of fun. So she calls me a creep for, quote, digging through her tweets, and I told her she was the genius who put it right in her fucking Twitter headline. I didn't do any digging, and then she blocked me. Boo-hoo, what a fucking travesty. Wow, you're a big grown-up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a creep for digging through my tweet count. Isn't that what it's for?
I literally, on my laptop, drug the fucking arrow over her picture, which then brings up the little window that shows, who they are, how many followers they have, and there's a Twitter headline.
Okay.
And like the third thing in it was God 100. Faith and family.
Okay.
So, here's another religious
Really
person.
easy, yeah.
Yeah, dude, fucking thanks for softballing that one over the plate.
I don't have Twitter. I don't want Twitter.
So anyways, the whole point I was trying to make to these people is that instead of just canceling him, throwing him away, you make him work with people with disabilities. He learns about their stories, their struggles, and hopefully to sympathize for them and recognize them as human beings, not just easy targets for teasing. Twitter did not agree with that notion. One person said, it's not the responsibility of the disabled to teach this kid to respect him. And I countered with, you're right, but the opportunity to work with them offers the chance to use the experience as a means to an end, teaching him to be a better person who is considerate of those with disabilities.
The best way to do that is to work with people that have disabilities.
Yes, I said you want to humanize them for him, so he feels compelled to offer an apology to his victim and change his plane of thought. But here's the thing. The problem with just cutting bait with him is that it creates the possibility of just making him even more angry and disrespectful of the disabled, as he's just going to go, oh, that fucking guy got me in trouble in school, and now it's coming back to haunt me now.
Yeah, fuck all handicap.
Yeah, so this is the type of situation where if this was someone who was, like, say, a white supremacist, could stand to further radicalize them. One day, you're like, I don't like any of those brown people, fuck them. And then you tell them what a horseshit asshole they are for thinking like that, and then you tell their boss they think like that and they lose their job, and the next thing you know, and this might be a stretch, you got another fucking Timothy McVeigh on your hands.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that those are the same people that just don't learn from their own mistakes. Again, they just started blaming the person they hate, even though the person they hate didn't do anything.
Right, you just drive them further down the rabbit hole. It's fucking ridiculous. So, did you ever see the movie American History X? No. Edward Norton, Edward Furlong. They're two brothers. They're involved in some Californian neo-Nazi movement gang.
Nope.
Okay. Edward Norton's character, he goes to prison for manslaughter. Some black dudes that he disrespected at the basketball court come to his house and try to break into his truck. So he goes outside and fires off some bullets. He catches one of them. He fucking curb stomps him. It's one of the most infamous scenes of that decade in cinema. I can't believe you haven't heard about it.
Nope, I haven't.
Okay, so anyways, he goes to prison for killing this guy.
Okay.
Which, in the white supremacy realm, would land you major clout. He goes to prison. Prison's a different story, right? It's you stick with your own, you click up, you join a gang for protection. He goes there. He finds that the white supremacists there aren't so agreeable. They fucking rape him in the shower.
That would be very disagreeing on my part. Yeah, I wouldn't like that very much.
So he becomes disenfranchised with their ideals, obviously. Because getting butt-fucked by anybody against your will never really stood to make anybody closer friends,
Yeah. So he was a white supremacist that curb stomped the guy that tried breaking into his house, and when he went to prison, he tried making friends with them, and they rejected him?
No, they tried to basically bring him in because they could see his fucking swastika tattoo. I haven't watched it in a while, but they try to, there's a disagreement. He sees that they're working with the blacks in there and basically accuses them of being race traitors. They weren't white supremacist enough for him, so to show him the error of his big mouth ways, they gang up on him in the shower and they hold him down while their boss comes up and jams about 8 inches of angry dick up his ass.
Now, is it me or is that irony that a bunch of white supremacists who probably don't like gays are butt-fucking somebody to teach them a lesson?
Well, that's the same thing with Islam. It's not gay. It's for punishment. It's a power thing.
Whatever.
So what changes his mind the most is getting a job in the prison laundry service. He's forced to work with a black guy. And it's kind of, there's some tension in the beginning, but then the black guy cracks a joke about Klansmen with a sheet over his head, and it makes him laugh, and they get to be buddies. And he realizes, okay, I like this guy. I'm an idiot. Like, he really does some introspective thinking.
Okay.
And it changes him completely. He sheds any notions of his previous racist ways. And it seems idealistic and totally Hollywood, but it makes sense when you consider how overcoming our differences helps us to come together via our similarities.
Yeah.
So when this story broke, I ran it by my wife. My wife has a sister with Down syndrome. She's a year and a half older than her and a year older than me. So she said when they were kids, her sister used to get teased all the time on the bus. Because back then, they didn't separate the kids that were special ed so much from the regular kids.
Yeah.
She was confused why people didn't see the need to kind of teach him some humility through, say, even like a volunteer experience. They're just like, fuck him. And then she's like, and I don't get it. Nothing that he did to that kid has to do with hockey. He earned his way to be drafted and play in college by being good at a sport. So what does that have to do with the bullying? You're just taking away something that you can take away versus, you know, if this was another kid on the team and he bullied him. That was not it. There was no hazing. And she said, people used to tease my sister on the bus all the time, but I'm not looking to punish any of them now because they were just dumb kids. Like, what good is it going to do? And I talked about how you can further radicalize somebody by punishing for those beliefs and just like leaving it at that. Like, you have to do more.
Yeah. I mean, is that the kind of the whole thing behind rehabilitation?
Well, I think
when someone goes to prison, it's not just to punish them for it, it's to learn from it, you know, teach them a skill and stuff like that. I mean...
Yeah. And, you know, obviously he got off easy with community service and authoring some apology letter that he really didn't take part in. The thing that pissed the victim's family off the most and hurt the kid that was the target even more was how he was never apologized to. But I said, what good does an apology mean if he's forced to do it? Now, if you put him through all this shit of having to work with people with disabilities, maybe he goes, oh my God, Isaiah, I was terrible to you. So here's my final thoughts on this one. I think the whole issue should be looked at like this. Obviously, actions have consequences.
Yes.
Right? And he deserves to lose everything. At the absolute most, you take away all the hockey shit. That's what you get. Because it wasn't just like you were bullying a kid. You really fucking put him through the ringer.
Yeah, with the popsicle thing and, yeah.
So, here's the thing though. Cancel culture serves only a short-term nuclear option type solution. It only seeks to punish, not to rehabilitate. So, you can cancel someone and be done with it, but what does that ultimately teach them? Instead of social justice, which is about retribution basically, the approach should be restorative justice, which is about reparation. So you recognize publicly what you did and the harm it caused, and you apologize in person to your victim because he hadn't done that. And then you build the kid, Mitch Miller, you build him back up by involving him in some humbling volunteer experience so that you can create change in him. And then this is my thoughts on cancel culture and how the second you find out about something that you think somebody did, even with very little detail, everybody like, oh, you're over with. Fuck you. Fire them. Fuck their whole family. You know, cancel culture is vicious.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the deal. What's easiest is not always what's best, and what's deserved is not always what's right. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
And that's the end.